listening to the Patriot Nation podcast, presented by Pat's Pulpit.
All right, welcome to the Patriot Nation podcast. We are joined by an incredibly special guest. He is a staff writer for SB Nation, but I mean, we all know him. We love him here at Pat's Pulpit. Mark Schofield, the former host of the Sco Show Slack channel. We love the guy. Mark, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate having you.
What's going on, friends? It's great to be here. Pat, you and I have been on some shows before. This is actually the first time Matt and I have talked, even though we've known each other for years. It seems like we were talking before the show. It's like, it's the first time we've done anything together, but we've been communicating via Slack or text or,
inside the pylon.
Since the ITP days. So I've known you guys both for a very, very long time. This feels like a homecoming. Excited to be here. I know we got a lot to dive in, so I'm going to kind of shut up for a second here and let us get rolling.
I wish we should have had a Africa intro for this one.
We missed that opportunity. There's a Bears podcast. The Tape Never Lies Network, TTLN, and I was on with them last week to talk about Justin Fields, and they have like an entire like theme song with Africa, but it's like with my name woven into it. Got, like, photos of me from like back when they dug up some photos of me playing college football. Like
unreal.
It's unreal. Like, and this is the first time when I was on with them last week that I've been on with them in like over a year, and I'd forgotten it. And like they hit me with it. I was just like, whoa, this is kind of cool. Hey, there's me playing football. So yeah, that's great. People have done that.
I love that.
That's so good. So good. It's pretty cool that you're like known by like one thing. Like anytime I hear that song come on,
I've always kind of looked at it, Pat. Like there are worse brands to have.
That's very true.
I mean, and I'm sure. Look, there's people that would probably know me for other reasons and refer to me in different ways. But for most people, I'm the total Africa guy, and I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I love it. Like I said, I hear that song, and I'm like, oh, Mark would appreciate
my favorite thing, and we're totally already derailing the show, which is are like the Sunday mornings when I like wake up and text and check my phone, and people will like have DM'd me like, "Hey, I was at karaoke last night and we did Africa." Or Burned one time sent me a video from a wedding where the entire like wedding party was dancing to Africa, which I thought was great. There was also a night, and I'm going to keep this person's identity anonymous, where apparently the song was requested by somebody at a bar, and people fought back and said they didn't want it to get played, and it actually started a fight. And so I woke up one night to a DM from a member of football media saying, "Hey, I was at a bar and there was a bar fight because of Toto's Africa."
That's unbelievable.
And I thought you should know that, which I thought was a tremendous story. I'm not going to say who it was.
It's a great story.
He or she, I'm going to keep their name anonymous, but it was a pretty cool story.
I love it.
Now, before we get to the Patriots, I will say it's not my favorite Toto song. I'm a hold the line kind of guy.
Yeah. See, a lot of people say that Hold the Line is one of their favorites. Interestingly enough, I think my favorite is actually Pamela. It's probably my favorite Toto song. There's also Won't Hold Back by Toto. I think it's Won't Hold You Back. It's another favorite song of mine by Toto. Pamela. But yeah, I mean, the great thing, having seen them live, is that they totally know. Like they do this incredible medley because these guys were like, session musicians for so many different artists. And in the middle of their concert, they like do this medley of stuff they've contributed with. And a lot of it's like Michael Jackson and other stuff. And everybody's just kind of like, yeah, this is cool. And then right at the end, lead singer gets up and says, "All right, everybody stand up. This is why you came." And they start doing Africa, and everybody just goes nuts because that's the song that obviously everybody knows the most. But I Won't Hold You Back and Pamela are probably my two favorites.
I'm gonna have to dig deep into the Toto discography after this one.
Yeah, they've got some songs like I'm trying to. There's one that's based on this like play, and I'm gonna have to look it up when I get a chance. But it's about like this guy that escapes from prison, and people think that he's like the coming of Jesus, the second coming of Jesus. And so they wrote a song based about that. And I'm blanking on the name of it. They've got a really deep catalog. And then, of course, there's all the stuff that they contributed to, a lot of Michael Jackson stuff and other stuff, which is really cool. Like I said, that interlude, that sort of segment in the middle of their concert is pretty cool. Yes, this is tonight's episode of Total Soft Blocks. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We're going to go 40 minutes now on just the genesis of Africa. But yeah, a pretty deep catalog.
I was gonna try to come up with some sort of Wizard of Oz way to to usher us into Patriots.
It's a tough segue to make. It's a tough segue to make.
I got nothing. I was like, oh, Toto was the dog in Wizard of Oz. Maybe we'll make some over the rainbow, type of thing. But here we are. Nevertheless, we're not in Cincinnati anymore.
Dark blue gold.
So I will. Here's what I'll say. Okay. We're getting into the Patriot stuff, into the nitty-gritty. This is why you tuned in. Although maybe you tuned in for the Toto stuff. I don't know. It's possible. Mark's here. Like what the heck, right? So Patriots are 5-4, heading into the bye. Up and down. Some good, some bad, some not so good. And we'll get into all of it. What are your impressions of this team, though? Kind of overall, what are your impressions of the team after 9 games and about halfway through the season?
I mean, my main impression is they've sort of figured out 2 of the big 3 things that you need to figure out as an NFL team. They've figured out their run game identity over the past couple of weeks. I was sort of getting ready for the show today, and I was taking a look at some numbers. This is a team that we heard so much in the summer, so much in the offseason, outside zone, wide zone, all that stuff. In week 1, they ran it 9 times outside zone, according to SIS, which was second most in the league through the first week. And they've run it just 24 times since, 27th in the league. Now, in that first week, they ran 5 inside zone plays, which was like middle of the pack. 65 since then, second most in the league. Like they figured out sort of, all right, that outside zone, wide zone, run game, run scheme, we'll still have it in the playbook. We'll still run it a little bit. But we're more of an inside zone team. We're more of a gap power team. Like that's where they are sort of with their offensive run game identity. So they've figured that out. They've kind of figured out what they are defensively, right? They're a team that can pressure you. They pressure opposing passers second most in the league in terms of drop back percentage where they get pressure. And they don't have to rely on the blitz. Like their blitz rate is middle of the pack. They've got guys, certainly Matthew Judon, Josh Uche with the 3 sacks last week, Dietrich Wise, who's taking on a big role as well. They can get pressure with 4. They will blitz at times, but they will get pressure with 4. They can get pressure with 4, which is a huge thing to have in today's NFL. It allows you to do so much in the secondary with numbers. It's the old adage, if you can get pressure with 4, you're going to be in good shape. They've got that. So they've figured out those 2 things. The thing they still have to sort of figure out, and unfortunately, this might be the most important part, what's their pass game identity? And it's something that, you watch that game against Indianapolis, and it's something you can tell they're sort of still struggling with. Are they a vertical passing team? Are they a spread quick game passing team? Are they an under center play action passing team? Like they're still trying to fuse together these different schools of thoughts to figure out where they want to be, what do they do best. And I think, can sort of bring us back to the summertime discussion of, with the talent you have in this roster, with the players and the skill sets you have in this passing game, what is it that's going to get everybody to play their best? Because, watching Mac Jones last year, watching Mac Jones in college, watching Mac Jones on Sunday, I feel like he's perhaps best suited for a spread, shotgun-based, quick passing game. Let him spread it out. That's where he seems most comfortable. I'm not sure that fits with the receiving core around him. And so they're struggling to find that identity. Maybe over the bye week, they take a chance to sort of sit back, reevaluate everything, look at, Jones and the games that he's played, look at the entirety of this offense, through the first 9 weeks of the season and figure out what it is they're going to be in the passing game. But that's the big component that they have to figure out as we get into the second half of the season. So overall, look, they're 5-4. They're in the mix, which I think we would have taken back in the summer, especially, right before the season started, with everything we were hearing about this team and everything we saw with our own eyes, the Vegas training camp preseason game, joint practices, the Carolina joint practices, Carolina preseason game. If you would have told me they still would have been 5-4 and just basically like 1 or 2 games out, and I would have said fine, because the team I saw then, I was like, man, we're going to be like 6 games out of it by the bye.
Especially if you then add in the caveat that Mac is going to be injured for parts of that
Yeah,
too.
I mean, that's the other thing, Matt. Like, if you had told me back in August that, hey, Bailey Zappi is going to start 2 games before the bye out of necessity and injury, not because, you're blowing teams out or whatever, I said, oh, man, this is going to be bad. But, Zappi fever was legitimate in the sense that they won 2 games with him at the helm. They really could have won 3. If you look back at that Packers game, they could have won that game. They probably were a little bit too conservative. I know, you guys would probably agree with some of that in that game. They had a chance to win it. But the fact that, look, they won 2 games with Zappi, they might have found a backup spot starter in this kid to pick. Didn't surprise me when it happened. I wrote about it in the moment. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of good things have happened, but unfortunately, they still have this one sort of big question to resolve.
That Packers game, just like the Cowboys game from last year, where you're in overtime, and it's like, you got an explosive offense on the other side of the field, and sure, they're not playing well. I mean, the Cowboys offense played well last year, but like, sure, the Packers aren't playing well, but it's like, if they get the ball back, you're losing the game. Like, you're going to lose. And when they punted, just like when they played Dallas last year, I'm like, oh, they lost. Like, you knew the second they punted, the game was over. And, it's one of those things. And listen, I mean, it took the Packers 69 minutes to beat the Patriots. So, like, from that perspective, I'm like, okay, that's not bad. But then the Packers kind of suck. So, like, it's really not, it doesn't make you feel as good.
Still
as
a
good
loss,
about it,
right? Like, the bottom line is this: like, it's not like you get quality losses. You're not going to get points, or it's not going to impress the voters. A quality loss. It's still a loss, and they had an opportunity to win that game. And the more we watch this game and study this game and think about this game, I'm growing more of the mindset that if you're going to lose, go down being aggressive. Like, go down being aggressive. Like, if you lost because you couldn't get a stop, and if there's also this idea that, look, we're going to punt it away because we trust our defense. If you trust your defense, go for it.
Right.
Go for it on 4th down. Like, if you trust the defense to make a play so much so that you're willing to give them the ball to begin with, what is the difference if you're giving it to them at the 50 or if you're giving it to them at the 30?
Well, I think my argument at the time was basically that it felt like they trusted Marcus Jones to get yards in the return game more than they trusted the offense to actually pick up yards. It felt like it was better to force a punt and try to return something into field goal range than to actually run the offense.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably something to be said. And, it's also fair to give the context of they're down to their 3rd-string quarterback, who's a rookie, who they probably weren't expecting to have to play. And the playbook was extremely limited at that point. And so maybe they thought, we don't have really a play that we're comfortable calling / he's comfortable running for this situation. Let's see if we can get a stop. I mean, maybe that was the thought process. But again, I'm maybe it's just me getting old, but I'm of the mindset now, go down swinging.
Right. Well, and Dark Blue Gold's asking about, have they been noticeably more conservative post Brady? And I'll tell you, like, I think in 2019, I go back to 2019 when they were incredibly conservative then with Brady. And I think that they've absolutely been way more conservative than I would like to see. Now, they did go for it twice on 4th down in New York, which I was happy. I was really happy to see them do that. I thought that, they didn't pick up the first one. They picked up the next one, obviously. But, like, those are the types of things you have to do. And Belichick has always kind of done those things. And for some reason, I almost thought, and I said on a podcast, a year or two ago, that like maybe he's zigging while the rest of the league zags. Everyone's getting super aggressive, and he's thinking, well, that's based on if I'm aggressive too. So if I'm conservative and you're aggressive, then your aggressiveness will hurt you because, and like, I don't know if that actually does anything or not, but like, to me, I would love to see him be a heck of a lot more aggressive than I've seen him be the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, in our sort of Patriot-centric viewing of the world, right? This is not the case, but as Patriots fans, we probably believe in our heart of hearts that the whole aggression on 4th down began with Belichick against the Colts on that 4th down on a Sunday night game, right? Like, it's, again, our myopic viewing of it, but that was Belichick being super aggressive at a time when maybe other people weren't doing that. Then maybe that sort of started. It probably didn't. There were other people being aggressive, but in our mind, that started the sort of 4th down aggression that we're seeing. And then, like you said, Pat, in typical Belichick fashion, he's zigging while everybody else is zagging. Oh, you're all going to go for it on fourth down now? Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll punt and play field position here and there. Because I think to the underlying question, it's not a post-Brady thing. Like this is, it was 18, 19. There were times when it's like, look, you've got Tom Brady. Why are you taking him off the field? Like, why are you taking your best player off the field? And he was punted and playing field position and relying on his defense. And so, I don't think it's a post-Brady thing. I think it's a Belichick worldview that's somewhat changed while everybody else is going swinging wildly in that other direction.
And I think it's changed a little bit. You mentioned the New York game and them going for it on fourth down. It's not like he's entirely resistant to it. He's just a little bit more conservative than the rest of the league.
Yeah, agreed.
Some of that has to do with the confidence in the offense, I'd guess, too. Look at the last couple of years, I think the offense hasn't been as good. And I can't really blame the coach for trusting the defense and the special teams more to make plays than the offense with some of the stuff we've seen out there.
Right. I mean, they win the Super Bowl in 2018, but that offense was never dominant, right? It was a slog all year long until, late in the season when they decided to become, a run first, a run heavy team. And they did that. And, Sony Michel scores 6 touchdowns in 3 games in the playoffs. So they were primarily a running team to begin with. Right. So, you didn't really trust that passing game. Even when you won the Super Bowl, you didn't really trust that passing game. And so you were relying on that defense. So, it's certainly a different type of feel because 2017, they aired it out like crazy. In 2016, they were an explosive passing game too. They just really weren't like that in 2018 and certainly haven't been that since. So anyway, all right. So offensively, we're there. Defensively, listen, you go from having one of the worst defensive performances I've ever seen against the Chicago Bears. I mean, that was just absolutely embarrassing, right? Against the Bears. And it's funny because you talking about being on the Bears podcast and talking about Justin Fields, and it feels like they have gone from Fields being terrible to Fields being like actually using him correctly and looking awesome the last few games since the Patriots game. They were like, oh, maybe we should use him like this because this is where he's best suited, right? But that was one of the worst performances I've seen of the Patriots defense the last few years. They go from that to, what they've done the last 2 weeks, which has been nothing short of awesome. And maybe it was against 2 bad offenses, but even still, those 2 offenses have beat some good teams. I mean, the Jets beat the Bills last week, right? So, I think I've been fairly impressed with what I've seen. What are your takeaways? I know you talked about them a little bit, but what are your takeaways about the defense?
Yeah, I mean, the Bears game, I think, was kind of a head scratcher, obviously. And I think part of that was while they were ready for Justin Fields and his athleticism, I don't think they were ready to see it the way they saw it, because that Bears team, they took their mini bye to reevaluate what they were doing on offense, what their offensive identity was. And they, leaned into Justin Fields and his athleticism. He had more designed runs in that game than he had in all the weeks prior leading up to that game. So I think that was something that was a bit unexpected. And I think Fields made some plays too. And I think, look, you had an interception early. You had some turnovers that gave them, some decent field position, gave them some favorable situations. That certainly played into it as well. But I think for the most part, the defense, that game aside, is where you wanted it to be, and one of the questions coming in to this season was, what were you going to get in the secondary? What were you going to get at the cornerback position opposite, Jonathan Jones? And I think you've seen with that, Jack Jones and what he's done. I mean, to pick off Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau, it was a huge play. I think he sort of, solidified his role with his team. The pass rush up front is obviously a huge part of that. When you can get pressure with the floor, that's massive for a team. To be able to say right now, headed into the bye, look, only the Dallas Cowboys pressure the quarterback on a percentage basis more than the New England Patriots. That's huge. And then their blitz rate is in the middle of the pack, so they're not relying on the blitz. They can still do it. Is massive. Going forward, you're going to get tested a little bit more now, particularly down the stretch here. And if the Justin Fields game, hopefully it wasn't an anomaly, because you're going to see some athletic quarterbacks down the stretch here. You get Allen twice, you get Kyler, you're going to get you get Tua one more time, and that offense looks extremely explosive right now. And so this athletic quarterback bugaboo that has been a thorn in this team, this franchise's side for seemingly years now, that's not going away. And so hopefully they learn some lessons from that Bears game. But on the most part, I'm not too worried about this defense. I'm not too worried about this team absent that pass game identity we were talking about, say, a minute ago.
This defense is number 1 in the NFL in EPA per play as of this week. It's been incredibly good. I think the biggest concern I have with it is just being able to get guys on the field who can play the pass and the run at the same time. They're really good with that at the second level. But in the front 7, it's been, all right, you got Godshot and Guy out there for running downs, and you're going to get Aquale and Wise or Barmore out there passing situations, swapping out Tavai and Uche for Jennings, and all the Mac Wilson going out there, all these substitutions. Do you have concerns about that if they run into a team that says we just want to run the ball or we just want to pass the ball, or a team that can get them into bad looks?
Yeah, I mean, it's a concern because particularly when you start thinking about some of the offensive coordinators and offensive minds and they're going to see down the stretch. I mean, I'm worried about those 2 Buffalo games, obviously. But look, Ken Dorsey's a smart guy. Like, wouldn't surprise me to see more and more tempo looks thrown at this defense when they get a look they want to operate against, particularly a team like Buffalo that, look, we know they want to throw the ball. What if they decide, look, we're going to come out trying to run it? Nobody's going to expect that. And then they go tempo with that look. Or, when you see the Dolphins in week 17, like what's Mike McDaniel going to do? Because he's obviously got some toys, including a new toy at the running back position to play with. And so, that is a concern in my mind, Matt, that, down the stretch when they see some of these offenses and see some of these play callers that are going to have some ways to sort of maximize their opportunities against advantageous looks. That is concerning, particularly up front. I mean, I'm not too worried about the secondary in that situation, but it's really up front. Like, oh, they've got their run stuffers on the field. Let's start moving the pocket a little bit. Let's play with a little bit tempo, wear those guys down. We'll just throw it. Or, they're going light. They're expecting pass. They get their pass rushing guys like Barmore in the game. Let's try to run the ball a little bit. Now, you're looking at the teams they play and the offenses around the NFL right now, not many complete offenses that can beat you both ways at a very high level. And so that, minimizes the risk a little bit. Like I said, Buffalo is certainly a pass first offense. Miami maybe has that ability, but yeah, it's something to be worried about.
Yeah,
to me, go ahead. Go ahead, Matt.
I've been surprised we haven't seen more no huddle used against the Patriots. Look at that Bears game. There was a series in that game where the offense went no huddle, I think, because of a situation. I think it was a controversial first down call, so they were just hurrying up. Got the Patriots out there in a bad spot and basically got another free 10 yards because of the personnel that were out there. And I'm surprised we haven't seen more of that. I'm also surprised we haven't seen more no huddle with the Patriots offense, which you have to get first downs before you can run.
Right. No, but I mean, I certainly think the point about not seeing more teams use tempo against this Patriots defense is, one that I'm surprised by too. And, like I said, that's why I sort of talked about some of the offensive minds they're going to go up against, because I'm sure Dorsey's going to think about that. Kevin O'Connell on Thanksgiving night, like, it wouldn't surprise me if he's got that ready to go. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if LaFleur after the bye, does some of that. Maybe if it's just to try to get Zach Wilson in a better rhythm or something, but it wouldn't surprise me in the second half of the season to see more of opposing offenses using tempo to try to get those advantageous looks. It's a matchup based game, and if you're not doing that against a team that is in a situation like this, like New England, then you're probably not doing your job right.
I mean, if it's me personally, right, I am worried about it when you talk about the Bengals and the Vikings, because the Bengals and the Vikings have good running backs that can run the ball well, but also catch the ball out of the backfield. So I'm concerned about that in that situation, because if you don't play heavy against Dalvin Cook, he's going to kill you. If you don't play heavy against Joe Mixon, he's going to kill you. Like, it's just the way it is. If I'm going in that Bills game, I don't care about the run, right? I go back to was it 2015 where Noshan Moreno had like 240 yards against them, and they just said, "Go ahead, you want to run it on every play? Go ahead and run it on every play." Because if you're running on every play, that means that Josh Allen doesn't have the ball in his hands, and we'll take that as a win, right? And so, fine, if Devin Singletary is going to run for 190 yards, great. That gives us the best chance to win because Josh Allen isn't out there making crazy plays, right? And so, to me, I would dare the Bills to run. Go ahead, you want to run? Go ahead, do it. You know what I mean? And that to me, I feel like the Bills won't won't take the bait on that because they know their best player is Josh Allen, right? They're smart enough to realize that. So, I think that's interesting. And Dark Gold's asking about the injury. He hasn't practiced the last 2 games. I wouldn't be surprised if he missed a game or 2. Seems like it's just a sprain and he should be fine. But I guess if it doesn't respond, they might take another look at it. But he's not going to be out. He's not going to miss any serious time. It doesn't seem like, at least.
If Josh Allen misses time too, that means that all 4 starters in the AFC East will have missed at least a game.
It's crazy.
In a division where every team's above 500 too.
Yeah.
What are the odds of that?
It's pretty wild. Pretty wild.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyways,
hey, we've seen Bills run this defense before against the Bills team. Just go back to the Super Bowl.
25.
Yeah, was that the 5-2 defense they ran or the 2-5? I trying to remember 2-5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Against the K gun there, going way back.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and he goes into the locker room with like Harry Carson and all those guys. Carl Banks have prided themselves on stopping the run. And he's like, "We're going to let Thurman Thomas rush for 100 yards," and they lost their minds. They were like, "No, we're not going to let him." He's like, "Look, this is the best chance we got to win.
Right.
Let him run it. Who cares?" I mean, it's the same game plan. Come out there with like a 1-3 defensive front. Just play with 7 defensive backs. Say, "Look, we're going to dare you to run the football. What are you going to do?"
Right. Right.
And would you play a lot of zone defense behind that too, or are you playing man against the Bills this year?
I mean, with Allen, if you're gonna do that, I think you do want to play more zone to keep eyes on Allen, just because their perhaps best run threat is 17 himself.
Right.
And if you're now, maybe you do a lot of 2-man under, where you've at least got safeties to keep eyes on them. Maybe it's just man free where you've got somebody underneath that can keep eyes on them, and you still can play some man coverage looks. But I think for the most part, you're going to want to keep eyes on him because Allen has no qualms running the football. And if you're basically you're bracketing Diggs, you've got maybe safety help shaded to Davis, and you feel like you've got everything locked down in the secondary, and 37 becomes 1st and 10 because Allen's run for 8 yards. Like you're going to get out of that at some point anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And that's going to be a huge game, I think, for Duggar, Phillips, Peppers. I think you could throw Josh Uche in there as a guy who's going to have to pass rush and set the run, and he's got that athleticism to keep up with Allen. Yeah. They're going to need all of those guys to really pitch in to stop them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you put on your Twitter doctor hat for a second here? Josh Allen now has dealt with UCL injuries twice in the last 3 or 4 years here. Is this something that's like going to happen to him all the time? Do you think it's something that, it's kind of a foreshadowing of something worse is going to happen? I don't know if it's, some sort of baseball thing where guys have UCL injuries and the next thing, they blow it out. I don't know, but it just seems kind of strange. Like typically you don't see quarterbacks on the IR or hurt with an elbow injury. And it's weird that it's happened to him twice.
Yeah. I mean, I think the two injury mechanisms I think are a little different because obviously the one on Sunday was more from a hit rather than like strain and overuse or something like that. But you could tell instantly. I mean, I was watching that game and you could tell instantly he's like grabbing for it, grabbing at the elbow, like flexing his hand a little bit. So you could tell he's turned them over. But then look, 2 plays later, he threw 70 yards on the money. Right. So I'm not too worried about it. Like if he was able to do that, and talking to some Bills people, they were like, look, when he had the other UCL, like every time he threw it, he screamed because it hurt too much. Like the fact that he was able to come back, I know the play right after he had sort of a comeback route that he one-hopped it. And I think that was more his feet weren't set. The 70-yard throw on the final play, like didn't seem to really bother him. He was saying earlier this week, they're like, look, it's no big deal. I'll be fine. Like he's got a sleeve on it now. I think that's just sort of for comfort and to keep it sort of tight more than anything else. But I don't think it's like a pitcher, like you said, Pat, that's like on a verge of UCL, Tommy John situation just because of overthrowing. I think this one was more the like hit than anything else. And like the way it sort of like bent back.
Yeah. That's all right. Well, there you go. So I guess we don't have to worry about, they don't have to worry about it.
They don't have to worry about it. We're going to worry about seeing Josh Allen twice, which is
right. Yeah. Not fun. Yeah. Not fun at all. So, what do you think the likelihood of this team making the playoffs? Now, obviously, to make the playoffs, now listen, there is a possibility that all 4 teams from the AFC Beast make the playoffs. That's a possibility. It's not likely, but it is possible. I think the Chargers stink. I will always believe the Chargers stink. And so, I don't believe in any team in the AFC West outside of Kansas City. The AFC South is absolutely terrible. And the AFC North, right, has
the Ravens and Bengals.
Has the Ravens and the Bengals, right? And so you already lost to the Ravens, which is not a good thing. And if you lose to the Bengals, then that kind of ends that. But if you can pass the Jets now in the AFC East, you could get into the playoffs as the 7 seed with only one other wild card team. I wouldn't be surprised to see 3 teams in the AFC East make the playoffs, and I think it could happen. Right? They have to beat the Jets this Sunday.
Yeah, they got to beat the Jets. I mean, I think the thing that's important to remember is the Jets got a really tough schedule in the second half. I mean, because they get Buffalo again at Buffalo. They got a trip to Minnesota too. And I mean, Minnesota is a team I'm not quite sold on yet. I think we'll know more about Minnesota, say, in the start of December, because they got, they get Buffalo this week, maybe with Josh Allen, maybe with not. We'll still see there. Obviously, they get the Patriots on Thanksgiving night. Minnesota also gets Dallas, in their next 4 weeks. They get Buffalo, Dallas, the Patriots, and the Jets. The only team that's good that they've played so far in Minnesota is Philly, and they lost to them.
They got killed.
Yeah, but the Jets, they get Minnesota, that's a road game. They get Buffalo, that's a road game. And they finish the season at Seattle, at Miami, and back-to-back games. Like, that's a tough stretch. And so I think the Jets, they've got a tough schedule down the stretch here, which I think is going to work in New England's favor. Obviously, the Patriots have to beat them coming out of the bye. That's job one. But look, they've got to look around the rest of the AFC. I mean, maybe a wild card is Cleveland, in the sense, what does Cleveland look like in week 12 and beyond?
Right.
Can they sort of hang around? Now, I don't know, because they've got some tough games coming up too. They've got Tampa Bay. They've got Buffalo. Like, they've got 3 really tough games coming up where, it could be gone before they get Watson back. But that's certainly a team to watch. Miami, I think, is very good. And I think they've gotten better since adding Bradley Chubb, because they couldn't pressure the passer the way they were last year. Now they got a guy that they can win some one-on-ones for them, because their blitz schemes weren't working. They weren't pressuring the passer. I think that's going to certainly help them. But yeah, I'm with you on the Chargers. I fell into the media trap of, this is it. This is the year. Chargers are going to be great. That AFC West is going to be awesome. And it's not, and they're so hurt. They're so dinged up. Like, they can maybe bootstrap some wins down the stretch, but I'm not too worried about them. So yeah, Kansas City, the South, the Titans, and then a whole bunch of Jeff Saturday White situation going on there.
Outrageous.
They're certainly in it, which at this point in the season is all you can ask for.
Yeah, I think the Broncos are potentially also in it. That defense may drag the offense kicking and screaming into the playoffs.
Maybe, yeah.
It's not likely, but
they're
with
just
how bad the rest of the
team right now, and I gotta say, like, I'm not really buying Russell Wilson. So
no, that's
it's been so bad, it's unbelievable.
And now that they traded Bradley Chubb, I have much less faith in that defense to actually get the job done.
And they've got 2 games with Kansas City.
Yeah, they have to win one of those to keep their hopes alive.
Yeah,
just like I think the Patriots probably need to find a way to beat Buffalo in one of those 2 games.
Yeah,
I mean, is anyone in the NFL looking better than Pete Carroll right now? Pete Carroll trades away Russell Wilson, brings in Geno Smith. Everyone thinks they're going to suck this year, and that Drew Lock was going to be a starting quarterback. And meanwhile, they're competing for the division with Geno Smith at quarterback, and Geno's looking great. And Russ, meanwhile, goes to Denver with all these weapons and looks absolutely horrendous. And Nathaniel Hackett, who knows, but still.
What blows my mind is because we all wrote and said this summer, this is the start of a rebuild. This is the start of the teardown. They're going to have to draft a quarterback. They're going to tank for C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young or whoever. And everybody in the building was like, no, we believe. Right now, if the draft happened tonight, they'd have pick number 11 in the first round in Denver's pick. That's not even there. They'd be picking at 23. Then they'd pick again at 45 with Denver's pick, and then at 56, and then at 87. They have 5 picks in the first 3 rounds, 2 from Denver. They also have the 5th most cap space of any team next year. And if they don't have to draft a quarterback, which sitting here right now doesn't look like they need to force that.
Right.
I mean, imagine if I saw some Seahawks guys talking today about Jalen Carter or Will Anderson perhaps being on the table for them when they're on the clock.
Golly.
Yeah.
Will Anderson could drop out of the top 10. We can't get into draft talk right now, but the fact that Will Anderson dropping out of the top 10, that would be wild. But
I don't think he does. I mean, I think he's still top 5. But again, Denver's pick is at 11 right now. If the wheels really come off,
right,
and they get a top 5 pick from the Denver Broncos as
part
of the Russell Wilson trade,
that'd be unbelievable.
And it already seems like they kind of fixed the offensive line in one go last offseason too.
Cross and Lucas, they look like they got their tackles. Like,
yeah. While we're talking offensive line, bringing it back to the Patriots, do you have any idea what's going on with this? I mean, obviously Isaiah Wynn, Trent Brown having issues. Is there hope for this line down the stretch, and can this offense operate at even an average level if the line doesn't figure things out?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge issue. And talking to people sort of around the league about Isaiah Wynn, everybody I talk to, whether it's, with NFL teams, different organizations, even people that, were on staffs that went up against him in college, it's all kind of like right now with where he is and what he's doing, he needs dedicated help, wherever he is, whether it's at guard or at tackle, like he needs help. That's not a good thing to be saying about an NFL offensive lineman. Like, in studying Wynn this summer, one of the things I noted was speed rushers on the outside just are a problem for him. And it's not so much an athleticism thing, because I think he's athletic enough. I just don't, it's a technique, footwork, something. I don't think it's the length or lack thereof. You remember that discussion, and Skarnecki is saying, no. He's long enough. We've had guys with arm length that size that have played Matt Light, all that stuff. But it's just for whatever reason, like you see that the sack from Rashawn Gary, right before halftime against the Packers, is like a prime example of his outside edge. Just he gives up speed rushers too easily, and that's tough to live as a tackle. Now, kicking him inside, where sometimes you might, if you slide protection sort of his way, you might get center help from time to time. Maybe that works, but you're also then just kind of saying, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have to slide protection to his way all the time, and tell me a defensive coordinator in the NFL isn't going to figure that out and how to exploit that pretty quickly. And so, that's an issue. And then by sliding him inside, like, what are you doing at right tackle? Like, it's a problem right now.
I saw
and it's magnified in the sense that Mac Jones moves extremely well in the pocket, can create space with his feet and with his legs, and he's good at sort of pocket evasion. But you don't want to be in a world where you just know that Mac Jones is going to get pressured a ton. But that's the world that they're living in right now, which again gets us back to the earlier conversation. What do you want your offensive identity to be? If you want it to be a vertical-based 7-step drop passing game, is that really the best situation and scheme for your offensive line? Maybe it is better to be a spread. If you think back to the Cincinnati Bengals, when they couldn't protect Burrow, their answer wasn't, let's go under center 7-step drop. It was, let's go 5 wide and at least give him a chance to get the ball out quickly by identifying some stuff pre-snap. And when you watch Jones last year, this year, Sunday, his eyes seem to be working best when he's operating out of spread. Like he just seems more comfortable in seeing, reading, and making decisions when he's in the gun, when it's 4 and 5 wide. And I think that combined with what you're seeing up front from a pass protection standpoint tells me what your offensive philosophy in the pass game should be. Now, the flip side to that is, all right, you're also an under center, inside zone, gap power run scheme. That falls you into the trap of the Bengals of this year, where it was, if Burrow's under center, you're running the football. If Burrow's in gun, you're throwing it. Like,
you have a run playbook and a pass playbook, and they're not related.
Yeah, and as we saw the Bengals early in the year, they struggled with that. So, again, a lot of it is sort of the core question of what is this pass game going to be? What can it be? You got to figure that part out.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've noticed just watching Mac this year, he doesn't seem to read the whole field as much as he used to either. It seems like there's a lot of situations where before the snap, he's deciding which half of the field he's going to, and then he's reading a high-low, or he's reading a defender, he's reading man coverage, whatever's over there, and throwing the ball to one of 2 or 3 guys. And if that's not there, he's got to check down, and that's it, meaning that defenses kind of know one half of the field might be dead on every one of these plays. Is that something you've noticed too, or?
I mean, I've noticed it in the sense that, like Dan Orlovsky had that video from this week where it was that 3rd and 4 play, and you've got the 3-by-1, bunch look to the right, the X ISO go route on the left, and Jones locked onto that go route. The spot concept, the 3-receiver concept, the spot route was open, but Jones kind of locked on and, like you said, sort of predetermined, like that's where he wanted to go with the football. When I was playing, when I'm coaching, and you get that 3-by-1, you get that isolated go, we called it a peek, a quick look. Like you look at it quickly. If you like it, throw it. If not, you got to come off and get to the concept. You look back to the Baltimore game. Through the first 2.5 quarters of that Baltimore game, I was like, this is the Mac I wanted to see. This is the Mac I've been waiting for. But then he started to fall into this trap of, I've got an isolated go route to Devontae Parker, or I've got this route that I want to throw, and he stayed on them a little bit too long. A lot of concepts, they are sort of, half-field reads in a sense, like depending on, like, again, to use Cincinnati, there's a Zach Taylor playbook, like right here that I was reading the other day. I mean, you've got a lot of concepts that are, man zone reads where it's like, okay, it's man, you're reading this side, it's zone, you're reading this side. Like,
Right.
You don't have to know the difference, cover 6, 7, stubby, stump, all that stuff. It's just, if it's man, you're reading this side, if it's zone, you're reading this side. So there are a lot of plays, and even in New England's playbook, which is just out of my reach, where it's like, yeah, if it's zone, you've got your half field to read. If it's man, you've got your half field to read. And there are other kinds of half field reads, middle field open, middle field closed, things like that. So the fact that there are times where he's locking onto one side of the field, that doesn't trouble me. What troubles me more are the moments like that play that Orlovsky highlighted, whereas he's isolated on one receiver, his initial read, and he's slow to come off of that. And that's sort of, the concern that I have with part of his game right now is there are moments when he's locking onto a read or to a route, and he's slow to come off of that, and he's missing opportunities elsewhere. Are there things that Patricia and Judge can be doing to help him out? Like, sure. Like some of the spacing on their concept seems to be wildly off. Like, some of the concepts seem to be breaking later than perhaps this line is able to protect Jones for, which again gets us back to the offensive philosophy. But are there also moments where Jones is like either locking onto a receiver or a route and is slow to come off of that? Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's issues there too, in that there's no easy buttons. Like this offense can't really execute screens all that well this year. A lot of their running game stuff is still hit or miss. So there's never a play where it's all right, we're going to hit 1 or 2 easy buttons. We're going to be at the 50-yard line, and now we can get into something more advanced. Yeah. You're doing that from your own 20-25.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right.
And, I think part of it now, I'm curious what you think, because right, the team keeps saying, oh, they did the same offense with Zappe and with Mac Jones. I just think it looks like 2 totally different offenses to me. And what's driving me nuts and what I keep seeing is, those 15-yard in routes. And I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, what are you can't protect that. You have shown all year long you can't protect that, and you keep running those plays. And yet when Zappe was in there, it was 3 steps and it's out, right? And that's where Mac was so good last year. It's like, hey, he sees the field, reads it, 3 steps, boom, it's gone, and like, and look, I think we got to lay part of the blame on Mac Jones for sure, because as you said, he stays on guys a little too long. He's stared guys down at times. He's made really questionable decisions at times. That the interception in the Bears game was just absolutely horrendous. It was just an awful throw and an awful decision. But at the same time, I feel like if we see more of what we saw when Bailey Zappe was quarterback, I think that, the Patriots would be a lot better off, and that Mac would be a lot better off. We'd be seeing a lot better from him than we've seen from him now. And it's frustrating to watch because it's there. They called it with Zappe. Even in the Bears game, you're calling stuff with Mac, and then all of a sudden Zappe comes in and you're like, wait a second, where were these plays when Mac was out there? It's just like, it's driving me crazy a little bit,
Yeah. I mean, and part of it might be, look, obviously when you're getting Bailey Zappe ready to start, when you're getting Bailey Zappe ready to play, you're still working from a smaller portion of the playbook. It's more your like day 1 and 2 install stuff, which is probably the stuff you're calling for more when he got reps. And with Jones, you've got obviously a deeper playbook to work from. But at the same time, like your job is, like you said, Pat, like you were saying earlier, Matt, like your job is to put the quarterback, whoever he is, in a position to be successful. And, the one thing that I'm excited to see is like the uptick in RPO usage. I think, and that's something I'd like to see even more of, because when you look back at Mac, even in college at Alabama, like heavy RPO offense, like top 10 in RPO usages last year at Alabama. And it wasn't, we always say like RPOs and play action, like especially in New England, but generally speaking, specifically with RPOs, it's all underneath slants and glances. Like there are third level RPOs. Like you can still be aggressive in the downfield passing game if that's what you're looking for, working off of RPO structures or certainly off of play action structures. But I do think they need to use that more because, Jones to this point is 8 of 9 on RPO throws this year. I mean, again, it's not a ton, it's not a big number, but they've been using it more and more, particularly the last couple of weeks, and I'd like to see more of that.
And it seems like when they go to the RPO, at least what I could tell, they're just counting men in the box to decide if it's a man or a run. It's not more complex than that. And which means they're running a lot because they're going against light boxes, but they're still not able to block for it, which I think is also kind of an issue there. The RPO isn't as good if you only have the P and not the R.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly kind of removes some, and again, like defenses are doing so much to try to get you to make it the R, right? Like defensive coordinators are going to play with light boxes. They're going to do things like sling the fits and things like that to sort of get into the fits if they have to. They'll find ways to get it out of too high structures to get things fitted up as well. But they want to turn you into a spectator if you're a quarterback. It's like we were just talking about with Josh Allen. That's what defensive coordinators at the NFL level, at the NCAA level, at the high school level. My buddy is a high school football coach, and he's getting ready for the playoffs. And he's like, every week we're turning high school quarterbacks into spectators because we don't want them to throw the ball, which, again, to my old brain sounds just wildly crazy. But that's the world we're living in. And so, you got to figure out, how to attack these two high structures, even off of, say, RPO looks.
Right.
And I think it's difficult. Just if you look around the NFL this year, what the average number of points per game for a team is something like 21, 22 this year. I mean, it's hard for everybody. It's not just
the hard for everybody. Explosive plays are down. Like numbers are down. You look around the league, like, a couple of years ago, you're looking at quarterbacks, right? And best quarterback in the league might have an adjusted net yards per attempt, like near 10. Right now, 2 is the only one over 8 adjusted net yards per attempt. And, he's at 9.28, which is incredible. But Jalen Hurts is second at 7.91. Everything is down league wide because of the too high world that we're living in, because defenses are just so comfortable right now saying we're going to play with a light box. We're going to play too deep. We're going to force you to be patient and work underneath and try to take everything away over the top. Some offenses have still figured out how to be explosive. Miami is certainly an example. Buffalo is an example. But not every other team has figured that out yet.
Right. Or have the playmakers to do it,
Or have the playmakers to do it. Exactly.
Right.
Hopefully Tyquan Thornton can be that guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why you drafted him, and if he ends up being that guy, then, it'd be great if they figured out that outside receiver position in the draft at some point while I'm alive.
Yeah. I mean, and you can see defenses, right? I mean, Hunter Henry down the seam is wide open because that safety has to commit to Tyquan Thornton. He has to. He has too much speed. He can beat that guy one-on-one. So that safety has to shade over there, and it leaves that big gap in the middle of the field for Hunter Henry. They just have to do that more often, and then that safety is going to have to think twice about taking Tyquan, and that's when you take the shot to Thornton, right? So it's just they all play off each other, but you have to run that play more often in order to hit it,
Yeah. Now, while we're talking about the identity of the offense, I want to go back to the run game for a second, because I only just picked up on this watching some of the Colts stuff. They obviously don't bring Jakob Johnson back. There's no fullback on this roster this year. Their 2 biggest runs against the Colts came when they had either Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry lined up in the backfield doing that. Little guys, what do you make of them kind of going away from the fullback and now maybe just coming back to it with tight ends?
I kind of expected it, to be honest. I mean, in talking, on some other shows this summer, when that came up, like, hey, they got rid of the fullback. What do you think? I'm like, if they realize that like that component to their run game is critical, they're going to use Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith in that sort of up back, H back type of role. And like you said, like 2 of their best runs against Indianapolis came out of that kind of look. And I think it's also important because when they added Smith and Henry, the idea was you're going to put stress on defenses with 12 personnel. Like that's what you're going to do. You're going to force them to decide, how are we going to treat these 2 guys? there's perhaps a window here to do more of that and use one of them in that sort of H-back role. And so it wouldn't surprise me if coming out of the bye, we see even more of that. But I always think this was kind of in the back of their mind, like, okay, we're going to move away from a dedicated fullback, but we've got this card we can play in the back of our mind if we feel like we've got to get back to these looks with, lead plays, some of the wham type stuff, some of the crunch type stuff that we've seen them and other teams run, using one of those guys in that role.
Yeah, and I like the idea of using a guy like Jonnu in the backfield because, he is able to lead block if you want him to, but he also has the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and be explosive with the ball in his hand. So
look, if you also want to, talk about the screen game, right? Like that has been very hit or miss for this team. One of their biggest plays was a tight end screen last week. And if you're doing that, that was more out of a win alignment, I believe it was on that play. But like you could do it obviously from an H-back alignment. You could show some different change ups to defenses. And so, scouting, right? Like you run the ball a ton out of that look. Defenses get ready for it. They're expecting that. And then you go play action, but set up sort of a screen to the H-back / tight end out of that look. That makes a ton of sense to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just finding ways to get yards, to get easy yards, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't need to, I just feel like everything is such a struggle for them right now. Yeah. And it's seeing Ramondre break 3 tackles at the line of scrimmage and still pick up 4 yards. And, and seeing Mac make a, 5-yard pass over the middle, but then not be able to complete the 12-yard pass down. Like it's just so slow to get down the field. And then you get into, into the red zone or, the deep red zone, right? Which is what someone called the green zone or something like that. Right. So it's like you get that 40-yard and in, and it's like, you can't move. The drive just stalls out. And then Nick Folk has to come in and kick a field goal. And thank God he's been automatic all year, but like you can't score friggin' touchdowns. I mean, you scored the last 2 games. You've won the last 2 games. You scored 1 offensive touchdown. Like, right. I mean, it's just like, outside of a 3-yard drive, right? You've scored 1 real offensive
basically gifted a touchdown. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's not great. I mean, to think about, red zone percentages and converting red zone plays into touchdowns, they're 29th in the league right now.
Yeah.
Like that's not a good spot to be in. When you're behind the Pittsburgh Steelers in an offensive statistic this year, that's not a good place to be.
Yeah. Not ideal.
And this is why you go out and you get all those tight ends, and Devontae Parker is in theories you can do that red zone stuff, and it's not there. And no. I mean, it also kind of feels like the offense runs out of gas too. Like, and it's what makes it hard.
And in a way, that's the world we're living in, right? Because part of the whole too high stuff is we're to force offenses to put together 10, 12, 14 play drives, to like finish drives, to be perfect, to be patient. This is the sort of offshoot of that. As an offense, you've got to figure out ways to keep those drives alive, to finish those drives with touchdowns, because that's what that's the game right now.
Yep. So we'll see. I mean, they got a long way to go. I still think the offensive line, I do want to actually, before we leave this discussion, I do want to ask you about Cole Strange, because Cole Strange was playing like an animal the first few weeks of the season. And all of a sudden, he can't play. He's been benched twice for Isaiah Wynn in the last 2 games. And, I think the argument can be made that David Andrews has a big part in that, right? But how well do you feel about your first round rookie if he can only play well when David Andrews is next to him at center? I just I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, there's a part of me that wonders if there's an early rookie wall coming into play here. Obviously, and I say this all the time, like the NFL draft is the world's longest and strangest and most absurd job interview, because Cole Strange really made a name for himself January at the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, where he's moving around, move to center, move around a little bit. And it's basically a sprint to the draft. And then suddenly you're in your first NFL rookie minicamp. So I wonder if there's like an early wall set it in, and I like the point about Andrews and needing some help and guidance. Like, I think, that's a valid point. I think you would need that for any sort of rookie. And so, whether he was a first-round pick or a seventh-round pick, like you're going to need some help from a veteran next to you. Certainly, a guy in David Andrews that is like the cornerstone, shot caller of the offensive line. So I'm not like overly worried about Strange. I thought, like you said, he was killing people up until a couple weeks ago. So that makes me think it's more of a wall thing than anything else. But
yeah.
So I'm not worried about him long term, but short term, it's a concern, just as is basically this entire offensive line almost.
It makes you wish that they still had Ted Karras. I think kind of that super backup, super utility guy on the inside. I think having him around probably helps you, and then you can feel more comfortable maybe moving Owenu to tackle if you need to.
Yeah.
He's playing pretty well in Cincinnati. I mean, he's not lighting the world on fire, but he's playing pretty well in Cincinnati, I think. So
pretty well would probably make him the second or third best offensive lineman on the Patriots right now.
That's true.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. It's been ugly, and so they'll be drafting. You got to assume that with one of these top picks, they'll be drafting another tackle. Isaiah Wynn's not coming back, so. And
with the age of Andrews too, I mean, there might be 3 new starters on this offensive line next year, depending on what they decide to do.
Yeah, which would be tough. So, anyways, all right. So I think we've really touched on a lot of different things here. Big picture now. Do you think? And I know we danced around it a little bit. Do you think they're able to? Where do you think they finish the season at? And do you think they make the playoffs?
I think they make the playoffs. I think they sneak in as a 7. And then they're probably one and done. But I think they get in just because they've answered 2 of the 3 big questions. And I still believe and have hope that they'll figure out sort of a pass game identity down the stretch. I think, like the Jets with the schedule that they have, I think the Jets will fade a little bit. Although to their credit, I think the Jets have had an incredible season so far. And the fact that they're kind of ahead of schedule, because, I mean, I remember talking about Jets with you guys like over the summer after the draft. It was like, yeah, I love what they did. They're like a year away, but next year and beyond, they're going to be dangerous. So I think the Jets are really ahead of schedule, which is impressive. But I do think they'll probably fade. I think the Patriots sneak in, but I still think they have this big question to answer about their passing game.
Right. And I think that the big question for me is Mac Jones the guy. I think that's something you have to figure out. And maybe they're maybe they're changing, maybe the passing game looks different with Mac Jones because they're trying to figure out whether he's the guy or not, whether he can do the things that they want him to do in order for this offense to run well. And if that's the case, then he's not answering those questions. Well, he is, but not in a good way.
Right. Right. Now, again, it's important to remember, like, as of 2 weeks ago, Justin Fields was a bust.
Correct. Yep.
I always remind people development, not linear at the quarterback position. Like, there's going to be ups and downs. And I do think the fact that Mac is in his like 3rd offense in 3 years, if you count last year with McDaniels, 2 years prior at Alabama, and now this system, like, there's some change and some upheaval. So what we're seeing right now may not be anything close to a finished product. But look, we're in the middle of year 2. Year 3 is when you're supposed to have put it together and figured it all out. We're in the middle of year 2. Like, we got to start, seeing some improvement here, seeing some consistency here, seeing better numbers against pressure than we have so far this year. I mean, those are questions that Mac needs to answer more than anybody else.
Right. Yep. Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And I said before the season 9-8, 10-7, somewhere around that area. And I still think that they're right on track to do that again. Maybe they don't get the 10-7, but I think 9-8 gets you in the AFC this year. And I think that's enough to push them in,
And if they make the playoffs, they're going to earn it with the teams they play down the stretch here. I mean, you have to go out west and get a couple road wins. They're going to have to beat division rivals at home, possibly the Bengals. Like, if they make it, they will have earned it. And that means that you probably saw a little improvement from this team down the stretch.
Yep. Agreed. Certainly could help them at the end of the year. Playing Miami at home, I think, is good because Miami typically stinks in the cold, which is good. I also think that last Bills game could be helpful. If the Bills are locked into the 1 or even the 2 spot and they can't improve anything by winning that game, then they might try to rest some guys, especially if they're locked into the 2 spot.
Yeah.
They might say, you know what? Why are we going to put Josh Allen out there if we can't get the bye anyways? We'll give him a bye week this week, and if we lose, we lose. Who cares? And so that could be a situation where that could benefit the Patriots. because of the situation that the Bills are in that last game of the season.
Yeah, and they do have the back-to-back games on the West Coast, but you imagine that sort of a road trip situation where they stay out there.
Oh, yeah,
Arizona, I don't know what's going on out there. I don't know if Cliff will even be coaching, by the time that game is played. And the wheels have come off with the Raiders. They're sidelining guys. Waller's on IR. So those games, they're
Renfro's on IR too, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think those games are certainly winnable games. And like you said, like you were just saying, Pat, Buffalo in Week 18, if they're just the two, we're probably not going to see Josh Allen because they're going to want to rest them for the following week.
Right. Which might then be in Buffalo against the Patriots, depending on how things go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the other thing too. Like, if there's a scenario where Buffalo is like, we could pick our opponent by losing.
Right.
It could happen.
Yep. And very true.
And also with that win they have over KC, they might just be the 1 seed and that's it.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
In which they should probably see those guys for a quarter or so, but they're not going to play the whole way.
Right. Exactly.
No. And you should win that game if that's the case. If you're losing under those circumstances,
if you're losing to Case Keenum in that situation in a winning get in kind of moment,
right?
Then you don't
deserve
to be
in
in.
playoffs. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, all right, let's get to MVPs. First half MVPs, and we could talk about a guy that surprised us if you'd like as well. Maybe a surprise and a disappointment. I don't even. You know what? I don't want to get a disappointment. Maybe we can do a good surprise as opposed to a bad thing. But your first half MVP, Mark. Then we'll go Matt, and then I'll finish up.
I mean it's Judon. I mean I get the easy sort of chalky answer here, but the way he's been playing now. The thing is, and I've seen some questions about this, allusions to this. He did this last year, right?
Right.
Great start. First half of the season was fantastic. Sort of faded a little bit down the stretch. Now, part of that was offense saying, look, we're going to double this guy. We're going to chip this guy. We're going to make life for him. He live in hell off the edge. I think what's been huge for this team this year, and we've talked about it already, Josh Uche, the 3 sacks last week, Dietrich Wise, and what he's been doing. Yep. Like now it's a situation where it's more of a pick your poison if you're the opposing offensive coordinator. It's like, you can make life a living hell for Matthew Judon. You're going to have some problems to deal with as a result with the other options that they have. And so even if he slows down and doesn't put up the kind of numbers he has in the first half of the season, I think it's still going to be a productive year down the stretch because he'll have created opportunities for guys that will finish plays. And so, I know there's been some concern, like, does he have a second half swoon like he did last year? I think even if he doesn't put up the numbers that he did in the first half, the production from this defense will be there because of some of the other guys that are able to win opposite from him this year.
I think they also started out by not playing him a ton, and they played him a lot, but not playing him on every single play, and rotating those guys in and out, and having the ability to do that because you're getting play from Penny Jennings, because you're getting plays from Uche, because like having those things is extremely beneficial to him because now he's not burnt out by the end of the year because you haven't used all the gas in the tank. So, but I mean, Judon, come on now.
Yeah, chalky, I know.
Yeah,
he's the obvious pick just to be different. I'm going Ramondre here. He has really been the offense as of late. He's been just so good. He may have almost single-handedly won you that game against the Jets with some of his performances there. He was really good last week against the Colts. He and Myers are the offense right now. And Ramondre looks like he has the makings of potentially an elite running back in the NFL. So I'm going with him there. Dark Blue Gold loves it.
I mean, it's the right call. It's the right call. However, I am also going to be different. And I am going to go with the one and only Nick Folk. You talk about being the offense. Nick Folk literally is the offense. He has just been an absolute monster. Twice this season has gone 5 for 5 on field goals. Is 9 for 9 in the last 2 games in field goals, and so he just, I mean, what else can you say? I mean, the guy just, I wouldn't be surprised if he has, close to 50% of the points of the offense has scored so far. So he's been unbelievable. So, and again, without Folk, who knows how many games they would have won without Nick Folk. So.
Yeah, he has 77 of the team's 203 points this year.
There you go. There you go. So not quite half, but pretty darn close to half.
Pretty darn close.
That's unbelievable. So, all right. How about a surprise, Mark? A good surprise, not a bad surprise. We've talked about some disappointments already. So let's keep it on the positive side here.
Jack Jones. I mean, you're talking about a guy, 2 picks, 3 pass breakups, NFL passer rating of 49.4 when targeted, according to PFF, which is, I mean, again, that's skewed a little bit because of the way PFF does their charting, but still, that's a really impressive number for a rookie corner that like is seen a lot of action, like just 11 snaps the first week. But you talk about a guy that has started a game, that has, played a lot past couple of weeks, like 40, 50, 46 snaps a game. So I've been really surprised how quickly he's adjusted and acclimated to life as an NFL corner.
Love it.
That's the kind of the obvious answer here. I think all of these guys are going to be on defense. That's my guess.
Yeah.
I'm going with Josh Uche, which is a little bit of recency bias after what we saw. I've been a huge Josh Uche fan though for a while as a Michigan guy. He looks like the pass rushing numbers are what jumps off the page. But what I'm more impressed with is that he looks just more disciplined as a player, like against the run. He's got his eyes go in the right direction more of the time. And that's what's going to get him on the field more, which is what he needs. His pass rushing ability has never really been in doubt. It's just his ability to get out there. So I'm glad he's putting it together in other ways right now.
I like it. I have a few options here. I could go Dietrich Wise. I could go Jabril Peppers. I could even go Brandon Schooler, who's been like Matthew Slater 2.0. However, I'm going to go because I have to do it. I'm going to go with Jaline Tavai. I have to do it. I talk shit about Jaline Tavai all off season. I just said, I don't know why he's on this team. What the hell is going on? If he makes this team, I'm going to be so mad. And he's turned into a reliable player. He's not a great player, but he's a reliable guy, plays the run extremely well, dependable player. He's like the perfect Patriot guy because that's what he does. He's just dependable and reliable. I mean, that's like the two things that Belichick looks for the most is you're going to do the right thing if I put you out there, and he does it. And so, I'm off the hate train 100%. He's off the hate train, and he's just a solid player for him.
You know who else falls into that category too is Anthony Jennings.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a surprise.
Excuse me?
Penny Jennings.
Thank you.
Go. As a guy we all thought was probably a cut. I think a lot of people thought he wasn't going to make the last round of roster cuts, and here he is giving you real minutes, quality minutes. So,
yep, agreed. So
Trivia
listen, that's it, right? That's the Patriots talk we got, I think, right?
Any more Toto talk before we wrap up?
No more Toto talk. Although, look, I forgot. "Stranger in Town" was that song I was trying to think of.
Yes, there you go. Okay, all right. I'll pretend like I know what that is. Also, Dark
Blue Gold. Yeah, you can.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, asked about Newcastle. Are you a Newcastle fan? That's what he
am. And hey, Newcastle is sending 2 players to the World Cup, which is very exciting. The team is off to a very good start. Excited about that. I know there's another aspect to being a Newcastle supporter right now, which is a little bit difficult. The new ownership group, so we can kind of breeze by that. But look, hey, it's happy time. I haven't been this happy about a Newcastle team since Passports with Pardue, which is that was like 2 houses for me ago. So yeah,
I don't know what that means, but sure. Also, Dark Blue Gold says 3 players are going to the World Cup. Apparently, not just 2.
Trippier, Wilson.
Oh, 3. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
I knew you know what it was? It's second. They're tied for second most in the Premier League. That's what was in my head. Yeah.
All right. I'm just gonna smile and nod during the
That's the other football right there.
Yeah.
So exactly. All right. Final segment of the day. Mark's come prepared. Here we go.
And now for something we think you'll really like. This week in sports history.
All right. I'm gonna start because I have a few. I'm gonna start. So on November 12th, 1933, the first NFL football game on a Sunday is played in Philadelphia. Sporting events up to that point had been illegal to play on Sunday, and the Eagles tied the Chicago Bears 3-3. Just a dreadful game to watch all around. A 3-3 tie, but the first ever NFL game played on a Sunday, November 12th, 1933.
Wow. Let's go
Matt,
way
you
back.
want to go
Right there.
next, or do you want me to go?
I'll let you. You're the guest. I'll let you go.
All right. I will go on November 10th. We were recording this on November 10th. In 1934, the first NHL penalty shot was awarded, and it was actually stopped. The first NHL penalty shot was awarded in a game between the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Montreal forward Armand Mondeau had his penalty shot attempt stopped by Toronto goaltender George Hainsworth to help preserve a 2-1 win for the Leafs.
Love it. Love it.
That's a good one. I'm going a lot more recent. I'm just going Patriots history here. Sunday, November 11th, 2001. Patriots beat the Bills 21-11. I don't think there was anything particularly notable about this one other than that there was just not a lot of offense here. Patriots won with 205 yards total. Brady had 107 yards passing and was sacked 7 times for 36 yards that day.
Was that in Buffalo or in New England?
This was in New England. That was the year.
Okay.
The game in Buffalo that year went to OT. It was a big
That was
snowstorm then.
that was the electricity game. It's one of my favorite plays of all time when David Patton got knocked out cold, fumbled, but half of his body was out of bounds,
Right.
and so the ball was touching his leg, so therefore the ball was out of bounds. It's one of my favorite calls of all time. So, but I thought that was later in the year too. So, but anyways, all right. Do you have another one, Mark, or do you
I
only
got
have
one more, yeah.
All right, go because I got one more too.
All right. November 9th, 1953, the Supreme Court case of Toulson versus New York Yankees upheld baseball's antitrust exemption.
Love it. Look at that. Oh my goodness.
There you
All right,
go.
I'm gonna end with a Bill Belichick one. Bill Belichick, as a rookie head coach of the Cleveland Browns, watched Bernie Kosar end his NFL record 308 passes without an interception by throwing an interception on November 10th, 1991.
Wow.
So there you
I
go.
didn't know that one.
There you go. So,
Like,
all right, Mark, this is a lot of fun. Listen, the people that are listening here, they know you, they know where to find you, but nevertheless, give the whole cavalcade of things. And I see, I threw it in there. Had to give
the cavalcade of reminders.
So throwback, but there's no cavalcade anymore. It's just SB Nation. Like I said, look, I'm dropping a piece on Friday morning about tech ball, the sport with the soccer and ping pong and stuff like that. But look,
I love it.
while we still have the Bird app, you can follow me on there at Mark Schofield. When the Bird
are
app
you
is
still
available,
verified?
I am still verified. I love how the new verification system, it says that like I am verified as a result of, and I need to find the language here because I just laugh when I see it. This account is verified because it's notable in government, news, entertainment, or other designated category. I'm like, are you talking about me? Notable? What?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I still have the blue check for now. Who knows if the Bird app will be here by the time this pod goes live? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But you can follow me for now on the Bird app at Mark Schofield.
Love it. Well, thanks for coming on, Mark. We always love having you, and we appreciate it. And we'd love to see you doing big things over there at SB Nation. It's great. It's great to see.
I'll be back soon, though. I'll be back soon unless you guys don't want me. But
oh yeah. Oh, anytime.
Anytime.
So we love it. Well, thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it. And no instant reaction this weekend, of course, with the bye week. But we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you mid next week.